welcome on stage architect Kiran Venkatesh from nFORM Architects from Bengaluru. A huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, okay. So I have this kind of two-part talk that I do normally, and since time is short and I think it's much more, engaging to be entertaining in the evening, I'll drop the first part and I'll kind of focus on the second part, but I need to give a little bit preface to help you understand where we are coming from. So the first part is really like, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times, and we are looking at a situation today for architectural practice where there's really one of the most challenging periods that we have ever faced. There's a lot of work to do, there's a lot of impatience in the system, there are a lot of problems to solve, there are a lot of solutions available, but making the right critical choices is challenging. So all of this brings us to a point that, this is a kind of zeitgeist that all of us face in our practice. So that's it. First 20 minutes, which I'm just done with, so you don't need to hear that, and I'm sure you kind of empathize with that. The second part that I want to do is to use that premise to introduce the work of the office to you through a certain kind of peculiar lens, which I hope you enjoy. So the talk really is a very personal kind of address of how we look at architecture in the office. It's really the spirit of the office that is speaking to you today, and I want to take it through you in a particular fashion, and you'll see what I mean when I go forward. So this is a poster that encompasses about 22 years of work. We are based in Bangalore. We are a mid-size office, about 40 architects, 50 head count. We've been around since 97. We've done several projects. We have a large volume of work of different types, and we are lucky in that. So all of this prelude kind of leads us to a situation which says, what does architecture need today? And what we are saying is architecture needs superheroes. And in a sense, what the architect's role is, it's this kind of fantastic arbitrator of where society is headed towards, the kind of mistakes that society is making, to kind of course correct them, to look at how we can really influence without specifically spelling out that we would like to influence. These are projects that you will see which are all office projects. We've kind of redrawn them. We reached a point in 2017 when we were 20 years old, and we said, what do we do to kind of celebrate that fact? And we said, okay, we're going to do 20 posters, one per year conceptually, and pick 20 projects and do 20 posters about what the office is interested in. And that's the poster. What we did is, on the 20th anniversary, we kind of, every week initially we released one poster, and then subsequently we kind of sped up the whole release on Facebook, Instagram, and so on. This was the first poster, or this is one of the posters. This is Captain America kind of with his shield diving down through one of the projects that we did. So what the premise is that that architecture needs superheroes, and obviously all of us have grown up around comics and now Marvel and DC movies and so on. And what we said is, we look at superheroes, we look at kind of these science fiction characters, and we look at what properties they what superpowers they have, what can they do, what do our projects do, and we kind of map the two together. So we have 20 projects, 20 superheroes, brought them together, talked about the qualities of the project through this kind of new lens. So it's a very fun way to communicate. I think architects have to communicate their ideas quite a bit, and it's nice to communicate in a different manner for a change, and we do this kind of, it's a pure self-indulgence. This was a competition for the National Law School. This was in Nagpur, so it was a very hot environment, and in institutions you really want people to mix and mingle and be kind of outdoors, semi-outdoors. So we were inspired by canyons, and what the canyons do is they have this kind of sweeping form. Deep down it's 5, 7, 8 degrees cooler than what it is up on the surface, and then we wanted to create that. So that's the Antelope Canyon, that's a kind of footprint of the building itself. And then these were moments in the building which talked about how you could be in an institute in a semi-open space, have hundreds of students literally hang out in corridors, etc., be shaded and still be in an interesting space. So these are spaces that we looked at the way that the canyons are, let's say, scored by rivers over a period of time. That became the surface of the concrete of the walls. And in those canyons was Captain America kind of coming down with the shield, and in some sense the building was also about shielding you from the sun. There was a lot of wordplay. I won't get into all of that. There was Assassin's Creed, Justice League. There was this idea of how justice is about light at the end of the tunnel, and how do you see representation in architectural form about light and light at the end of the tunnel. There's also a kind of whole commentary about social media, that buildings no longer have very elaborate briefs. Most buildings have very simple briefs, like people would want to take a selfie there, or there are people who said, I want a building that would be really popular on Instagram, and that's the kind of briefs that are getting out there now. So we said the hat toss moment for a graduation is very specific to the institute, and we create a kind of language from that. We are interested in graphics. We are interested in kind of communicating how a project is seen from different angles, from models, renders, and so on. So this is an apartment that we are doing. Lyrics from Coldplay. We took lyrics from different songs that we like, instances from movies, quotes from movies, and kind of map them. This is an apartment that we were doing, picturized it with Wolverine jumping off the balcony on a rainy night, and kind of this mood creation. That's the apartment. So these are all projects that are actually on the drawing board or are completed in some cases. You'll see Hawkeye with the bow and arrow standing off a house that we finished. This was way back in 2007, completely in exposed concrete. A little bit of wood and plaster, of course. So we got interested in saying, how do we represent the buildings differently? How do you convey the spirit of the project, the section, the way the double heights are, and how do you make it more playful, explain the activities that go on inside? So these drawings started then talking about that. This is a house we completed a while ago, and it was kind of on this continuous ribbon which unfolded from the main entrance up the steps into the first floor, living room, bedroom, finally ended up on the terrace, and that's Flash. And then the project was quite interesting in that it says, Flash has this thing that there are 4 rules you need to remember. Make the plan, execute the plan, expect the plan to go off the rails, and then throw away the plan. And literally that's what happened with this project, that up to the last night before the presentation we had a different project going, and then there was this kind of one brainwave which completely knocked out the whole project, and this is what we built. And then as we developed these sections, we got more and more interested in, look, this is the house, more and more interested in saying, how could you communicate different things? So Valentine's Day we did a poster with a couple kind of dancing on the rooftop with a heart. This is Deadpool jumping off a house that we designed. The house was designed on the simple premise that it was in front of a park. So what we did is just imagine that there is a curtain, and that you draw the curtain out, and then that's the facade of the building, and eventually it's like really a peel of the surface. And that's all you see. It's a very urban plot. The sides are built up, very dense. So sometimes the lines get blurred. Sometimes the only thing between in and out is the facade, which is a very true thing about commercial projects. They are really about a really large floor plate. You don't know what the use is, very speculative, and then all you're left with is kind of that thin veil of facade to design, and then all the innovation happens in that one thin line. And there you see Nightwing or Robin jumping off the facade as well. This is a competition we won, I think, way back in 2008 or so. So it's been 11 years, and it was a competition for the forest department in Bhopal in Madhya Pradesh, and it took for a long time to materialize, and it's still on site actually. So and this is Batman on top, and it says the night is darkest just before the dawn, and I promise you the dawn is coming. We've wrapped up the project saying this is not happening anymore. We archived everything, we pushed it out, we deleted all the files that were floating around, and a week later we got a letter saying the budget got sanctioned, let's get the project started. So that was Batman on top of the new one bhavan in Bhopal. The building's structure is up, finishing has to happen. Seen multiple changes of government, so there are all kinds of issues to deal with. This one's the Black Panther. He is roaming on what we did as the Indian Railways Institute for Finance and Management. It's a building that we visualize very much like railway tracks, if you've ever been to like a railway station and just see the trains coming out, there's a whole bunch of tracks which then get out of the platform and then converge, and there's switching and all of that happening. And this was inspired by that kind of switching, and we took the switching and made it three-dimensional, that the switch would then lift up from the ground, become landscape, allow you to enter first and second floors and then drop back onto the surface. So this was, a project that we dedicated to the Black Panther. That's Iron Man. So it says sometimes you got to run before you can walk. Very early on in the practice, we had this client who came in. He was from the mining industry in Hospet, and they said, we want a corporate office. I said, okay, what's the program? They said, well, we are 10 directors, we want 10 cabins. I said, what else? They said, pretty much nothing else. We don't have much, they don't have much to do. I mean, all the work happens out in the mines, and they make their money when it goes out to, or used to when it goes out to China. So the project was just about making 10 cabins for people who just wanted to have cabins, and there wasn't very particularly any kind of task that they would do in that. So we took this very eccentric request and made a fairly eccentric building, which turned out to be a large challenge for us to build, because there was no vertical angle in that, and everything was kind of built in concrete, and we didn't realize it at that point, but when we designed it and the structure, we realized that we had to keep the entire building shuttered till the last level was poured and it was cured, and then we had to kind of de-shutter it a certain way, which nobody realized, because throughout the life of the construction, all the shuttering was up there. So that's about, having to kind of run before you can walk. And it was a huge experience for us, and I think constructing something as complex as this using very conventional and basic local contractor techniques really changed the way that we could look at construction and see what is possible. That's the Hulk, and obviously Hulk goes smashing everywhere, and it's a smash hit. That's a project for a bank that we are building, which has really a very heavy mass, and it's kind of appropriate. It has the bulk like the Hulk. So, this is the Green Lantern. This is a building that we have just put into sanction for an office in Trivandrum. That's the office. It's called Virtus Green Space. It's an interesting idea in that we are postulating that the office of the future is no longer interested in just being confined indoors, that a lot of the work happens in different kinds of spaces. Obviously, we all know that an office is more a living room now. You have coffee, you have beer, you have all kinds of colorful furniture. Eclecticism is really the in thing in today's co-working spaces or collaborative spaces. So we took that a step forward, and we said, what if every office had a garden that was annexed to it, and then you could move out to the garden, and that could be part of the office space as well. So that's why you see the kind of facade folding in and out. It's expected to be a LEED Platinum USGBC building, hence the kind of green sustainability tinge onto that earlier render. The office is elevated above the parking, so it kind of floats. There's an entrance podium, and the parking is in the basement and in a multi-story at the side. The podium creates that kind of sense of entrance and gives you a large community space. There is an atrium which is at the podium. You can see a hole through the office, and there's a second atrium that starts above. So section is something we are very interested in all our projects. So if you're standing under that staircase, you can look all the way down to the podium. So there's this 8th floor permeability that's possible. That's a central hub. There's a cafe and a co-working space. There are pods all over, and then the offices are all around. That's another view, and it has a terrace garden, solar plant on top. That's Superman. Says dreams save us, dreams lift us up and transform us. So when we were back in 2003, 2004, we entered a competition for what is now the National Assessment and Accreditation Council, NAAC. It's a division of the UGC, and we won it, and it was a project which was a game changer for the way that the office worked, because in the library of this building, which was 10 years of practice, we could fit 10 years of every building that we had done inside that library, just the library, not even the whole building. And that was just a fascinating statistic for us, and it took us a lot of energy to build it well, and again it was built for the government. We did a kind of 75-meter perforated screen along the wall. We had a double skin, so you could walk and clean the glazing. These were ideas which were quite innovative, at least for the government at that point. And it turned out that it was really good, because then they had one person go in every morning and clean all the glazing, and it looks really clean even today. That's the same poster on Valentine's Day. We released one where Superman's carrying a huge heart. This was a competition for a building in Rourkela. It was kind of this bridge building. Rourkela was achieved its golden jubilee, and they said that we want a golden jubilee building, and I said, sounds great. You know, what goes into it? We don't know. You know, it's a commemorative building. We want something in it, but we want to build a building. So we said, okay, the most kind of interesting part of the institute is obviously the library. So we proposed a library. At some point, the director said, this building is looking really good. I would like my office in there and the entire dean's office in there. So the top floor became offices, lower floors were library. Then we put a technical center. He said, we want to create a student center. So this became a really nice hybrid with that one tower there. And the other thing that happened is there was an old campus of Rourkela, NIT Rourkela, and there was a new campus which was kind of developing as, and this was a bridge building. This was between the old and the new. So we went one step ahead and we kind of created this corridor from the old to the new, asked everybody to pass through this building, in a sense, negotiate the levels and go on to the new campus. So you would be in this heart of the huge canopy and void and atrium, and you would experience the library, you would experience kind of the director's offices and the hobby clubs in the tower. At the same time, you weren't physically in those spaces or compromising the security for those spaces. So in that section, you can see with the old campus on your right, you could kind of walk through into the building, see what's hovering above you, and then go through the technical science center and then go on to the other buildings on campus. All our projects, you will see, I speak about what we are interested in, and the section is really a big thing that we are interested in. So that's Wonder Woman kind of pirouetting on one of the houses that we have designed. Of course, what she says is only truth can save the world. We have replaced truth with architecture, so only architecture can save the world, and obviously in a room full of architects, I'm sure you'd all agree. That's the house. That's the house. It's almost complete as we speak. That's the section. That's Wonder Woman on Valentine's Day. This was one of our first projects. In fact, this is, I think, the third project that we did as an office back in 1999, and we inaugurated it in 2000. That's a Silver Surfer. It's a museum. It's a fine arts museum. And what really, I mean, if we read the text, it says, those to whom no distant horizons beckon, for whom no challenges remain, though they have inherited a universe, they possess only empty sand. And I think that's a kind of constant reminder for us, in that every project we do, you're only as good as the last project you did, not a project that we did back in 99 or 2000. So if somebody says, what's your favorite project? If I can't say the one I'm working on currently, I think there is some gap in the way that we are working, and we need to reevaluate that. So that's the Fine Arts Museum we built. That point we were very interested in rules and how you could generate buildings based on rules. So we had this idea that the body feels differently in space depending on the proportion. So there are spaces which are kind of very short and stacked that way, then they flip it around, become very long, allows for different kinds of sculpture, painting, so on to be. This side has a curve, one goes in, one goes out, and on the other side it's the opposite. It's not a curve, it's a kind of angle, and it's very different. That's the inside. The statement here was that art is no longer something that you put away in a museum on white or gray or red walls and you sit on a bench and you look at it, but it's really something that has to be part of your everyday life, part of circulation. You are walking across the ramp, you can see the art and so on. And everything that we did, there was a component of steel. So materiality of concrete versus steel is a play that is a common theme across the projects. The idea is to kind of clearly delineate parts of circulation from what the main mass of the building is. You can see a little bit of the art, very porous art museum. Cyborg projects range in size from about 160 square feet to, I think we have done 3.6 million square feet as well. But these are small retail stores That's cyborg kind of shooting out rays, which are the shelves of a small store we did for a mall. That's the roof. That's Catwoman. So Catwoman has this kind of, none of this is like verbatim what Catwoman says, but obviously altered. It says architects are not contained by rules of society, right? I mean, that's something we can all agree upon. You follow your own desires. This is both a blessing and a curse. You'll often be alone and misunderstood, but you'll experience a freedom other professionals will never know, which I find it quite profound, which is very true, I think. You're an architect, every site, every place, every emotion. With Catwoman, it's smell and so on, but you change it for architects. Incredibly heightened, fierce independence, total confidence, and deeply human responses. I think these are things that some of the projects definitely evoke in you, and that's a house that we did, which is kind of this helmet-like shape with a fine perforation, and it had crafted openings, play of light and shadow. With design comes great responsibility to create friendly neighborhoods, right? So we all know friendly neighborhood, Spider-Man, and Spider-Man's kind of swinging across. This is a clubhouse intended to be, bringing people together for a residential project. And the idea was that we talk about the ability of design to trigger interaction, to remove isolation, to remove ideas like depression, which is becoming more and more talked about now. And so we did this clubhouse, which was on a triangular site. Every floor was a different program. That's the section. That's the clubhouse. So it kind of cantilevers out onto a pool and the tree. The plan of the building becomes then the reception table in some sense. So there's a lot of interest in profile, in geometry, in section, and the idea of how you can render something to express the design intent. So those are things that, again, common themes in the project. The canopy on the top, there's the amphitheater at the second floor. This shades the amphitheater partially. That's Thor acting as a lightning conductor on top of an apartment that we designed in Hyderabad. So very simple apartment. There are three types of balconies. There's a strip balcony, a box balcony, and a room balcony, and those three kind of get composed on the elevation to give you that. It's about a 4.5 meter cantilever. That's the building, that's the podium with the parking and landscape on top. Some of these pictures are 6 years old, I think. That's an apartment, again, where balconies are kind of staggered, and you have you have Daredevil coming down the balcony. That's the project. This is a bit more complicated. Those of you who are familiar with Tron, know how the bike travels, how these lights travel, and when you do a commercial building, really you're looking at only the facade. So what we did is we designed this facade, which was almost what it is, and then we realized this looks very much like Tron. Right? So there is enormous thing about Tron and the digital network and so on, which is a little bit long. I don't want to run on for too long. But then you see there is like this little idea where that's the mass, that's how the lines go across, and then we kind of, the client wanted a bit at the top, so we have a nice atrium there. So there are few anomalies like the canopy and the top atrium. That's the building with a solar plant on top with the interesting kind of nose-like canopy. We did this canopy and we did these renders, and then at that time Star Wars released. And then we had Darth Maul in the canopy itself. So the canopy became Darth Maul and, kind of red light. At last we reveal ourselves. That was kind of the big Darth Maul sentence. Flip the building, mirrored it. You can see Tron cycles, kind of motorcycles with the streaks of light going on top. Valentine's Day, the building became a billboard with heart. So those were the 20 posters. We did that about a year and a half ago. And then we are doing a few projects now, which the posters should be out in about a week. I tried to rush them for today, but they just didn't look right yet, so we moved them out. So after Tron, we're starting to look at Star Trek, Star Wars, we're looking at the Borg, cubes, and so on. And we're all science fiction interested characters in the office, so those make natural choices. This is a library that we designed for a engineering college for a competition. We did not win it, but it's a fun building. It's different departments which took up different levels, and they were kind of woven by a continuous staircase. So it's a grid, 15 meter by 15 meter, 3 by 3, and then that's the kind of column grid, that's the departmental libraries, and it's a complete swoop, and you go from one to the other using nice staircases. The staircases have the new arrivals. The idea is that you increase the interaction. So if you want to go to civil engineering on the second floor, you'll probably go through architecture on the first floor, and all the new arrivals are here, and in some sense there is good interaction, and the library becomes this kind of melting pot, and you have things overlooking into each other. The idea is to exacerbate interaction and to allow accidental and chance meetings. The center was a courtyard with hanging plants from the roof. So that's the section. You could have like town hall level meetings, you could have presentations. That's the courtyard. So the expression of the elevation becomes what is happening in the inside. That's one of the other things that you'll find in all the projects, that there isn't this really elaborate idea of how do we draw an elevation. We just draw it inside out. What happens on the inside, you express it. So the staircases become what they become, and where you want glass, you just kind of put glass, and then you look at shading and so on. That's the office where all the stuff happens. That's another view of the office. So obviously these are all the guys who were sitting around and saying, did you watch that movie last night, and it was really cool. And I come in and they all they don't realize I watched it before them, and we end up talking about it, and we are like, which project is that? And it's become now a habit that everybody new who comes in wants to be part of one poster or the other at the office. So it's kind of fun to have them do that, and that's what I have for you. Thank you.